So we'll start our day sitting down, cross-legged if you can, but on your knees if it's not a comfortable place. And we're trying to let these hip flexors relax. So you can sort of kind of just give them a little bit of a massage. They're a bit tight. And then you can place the hands on the thighs, but you're not trying to push them down. You're just letting the weight just sit there. And then if there's any give, it'll happen naturally. Very soft to lengthen the spine out, remembering the back of the neck as well. Give it a little shake. And then allow the eyes to close softly. And think about the breath and sitting up tall. Just trying to get that pelvis into a neutral position. So ask yourself whether your pelvis is tilting backwards or forwards and adjust as necessary. And then we're going to take the hands and place them onto the ribs underneath the armpits. Breathing in through the belly, we'll then see if we can get the ribs to expand as well, so the breath comes a little higher. And feel the ribs move back in as we exhale. See if you can keep those legs relaxed, knees down. We'll release the hands down to the floor and then float them out to the side on the inhale. Just bringing the hands above the shoulders and then exhaling them back down again. And noticing whether you flare the chest and tilt the pelvis. But try and keep that very steady and upright. So if you're a little bit tight in the shoulders, a little bit tight in the hips, you will really notice your pelvis tilting around underneath. See if you can keep it soft. As the hands come down, we'll take a little twist into the left and look over the rear shoulder. And we'll ease that into the opposite side. And come back into the center. Take the hands high as we breathe in. And we're going to rotate and let the hands drop to the left. Inhale high. Rotate into the front and across to the opposite side. And down with the hands. Inhale out. And rotating across. Inhale up. And across. Bring the hands to the center. Allow the hands to come down I'm going to walk out of the fingers to the left, take a little side bend, so palm on the floor, right arm lifts, and then drop the elbow down towards the ground. You try and keep the sitting bones on the floor or the block, wherever you are. And let ourselves lift. We'll come up to the second side, walk the fingers out, take the arm high, and soften the elbow. So although we're kind of focused on the side bend, it's the opposite leg that wants to lift. So if we can, try and let that relax down to the floor. I can definitely notice that that leg is tight from yesterday. And then press into the ground to let ourselves lift up. Now we're going to just untangle the legs, give them a little shake out. And then we're going to sit back onto the heels. So going to be right on top of the heels on top of sitting bones. So the feet are underneath us, the knees are out parallel. And when we'll take the knees wide and just bring the hands down in front of us so we can let the weight sit down into the wrists. And then we'll turn the palms so the fingers point out and the thumbs forward. So we're rotating the arms around a little bit in the shoulder socket. See how that feels. And then we'll bring the fingers to face us, thumbs pointing out, which is stronger. And try and pull the body back a little bit, so we're increasing the angle between the forearms and the wrists, and trying to keep the heels on the ground of the palm. So quite a big stretch through the forearms. Really good if you're doing lots of vinyasas, lots of up dogs, half planks. Stretch these guys out the opposite way every now and again. And release carefully. And then we'll bring the knees back together. We're going to come into cat-cow, so onto all fours. So the breaks that we mentioned earlier, if you have them, just have them up towards the front of the mat. Cat-cow, we're going to draw the chest forwards a little bit, rock the shoulders back, tuck the tailbone, let the spine rise up towards the sky. So if you've not done any stretching this morning so far, this is the sort of first movements into the big movements into the spine. Just allow the first few to be small. Get a little bit of juice into the discs first. The muscles, the idea of opening up. Now, gently drawing the chest forward, you can draw the belly in a little more effectively. Press into the hands and the shins around the spine. Flare the wings out a little more. Inhale forwards. Exhaling back. And then we'll come into a neutral spine. So we're going to take the right foot to the back of the mat, just tucking the toes underneath and sliding it back, and being careful it won't sit into the hip, moving across the side. We want to keep the groin over the center line of the mat, the spine nice and long. And we push away from the floor so we don't sink into the shoulders. We kind of lift it a little bit, shoulders drawn back. And then I'm going to lift the right foot off the ground to about the height of the hip, trying to keep the hips nice and square, and just lengthening out through that heel. We'll take the left hand away from the floor and lengthen that out again, making an effort to keep the groin over the center line. Be conscious that the toes are pointing down on that raised leg. And then bring the hand and the knee back down to the floor, across gently over to the second side. So the left leg goes back, conscious of the pubic bone center line positioning. Lifting the leg slowly, about the height of the hip. Take a little breath. Extend out the right hand. So the palm faces in. Spread the fingers, spread the toes. Press into the shin. And we'll bring the hands down. And we'll take the knees wide again. We'll let ourselves come into child's pose. So sitting on the heels and just walking the fingers as far forward as you can, keeping them about shoulder distance apart. Head eases down to the ground. Although we've walked the hands as far forward as we can, we want to try and let the top of the shoulders relax. The elbows will be off the floor. Draw the belly in a little bit. Try and move the tailbone down to the bottom of the mat. And feel those ribs expanding out sideways as you breathe in. And then walking the hands back in. We'll let ourselves move into our first down dog. So spread the fingers out. Bring the shoulders over the wrists. Drop the shoulders back a little bit. Lift the toes underneath. And then knees away from the ground, we lift up. You can walk the first down dog out. Do pay attention to the hands being flat to the floor. Now the alternative to walking the legs out is to bend the knees and then press the chest away from the front of the mat. Keeping the bend in the knees, so you're up on the tippy toes. Just a different way of stretching into the lower back muscles and the upper back muscles. If you're a bit rounded and a bit tight in the upper back, this is a nice way of flattening things out for you. And then we'll slowly move into a plank. And let the knees come back down onto the floor directly underneath. Then take a breath. Let the right arm lift up to the side, threading the needle through. Bring it down under. And let that shoulder and ear come to the floor. We keep the top arm active. Press down into the ground as soon as the head and the shoulder reaches its furthest point, and then lift up on the breath. Exhaling under. Inhale it up. Beautiful long breath. Slow exhale. Enjoying the abdomen drawing in towards the spine. And we'll switch sides. Come back up onto all fours. Take the left hand out. Inhale. Inhale it up. And we'll press into the floor to draw the body up. Floating under. Two more. Last one. And bringing ourselves back onto all fours. As you arrive, tuck the toes underneath. We'll sit back onto the heels and lift the hips high. So almost into a down dog, but walking the feet in towards the front of the mat. Come into our first forward fold. We'll bring the hands onto the shins and lift halfway up. And exhale down, folding over. Softening the knees if you need to get the ribs and the thighs to touch. Lift up. Exhale back. So when we bring the lift up, you're actually trying to draw your chest bone forwards a little bit and the tailbone sent back. Exhale. Hands on the shins for the last time. We lift up and lengthen. And then we'll bring the hands out wide and ease up to the sky. Bring the hands above the head, through the heart, slow and low. We go all the way back down to the floor. Bend the knees as much as you need to. Take the hands out wide again. Flatten the spine out as you lift up. Hands through the heart. Drawing the belly in. Arms out wide. And then bring the hands in towards the heart. I'm going to soften the knees over the toes. Take a little breath. We're going to take the weight into the right foot. Allow yourself to lift the left foot off the ground. You're going to lean forwards a little bit as you take your left foot to the back of the mat. So you're coming into a lunge position and then dropping the heel onto the floor and letting yourself just open up into a nice star shape. So you can take the hands out wide and then wriggle the feet out a little wider. Turning the toes towards the front of the mat again. Sink down into warrior two. So when we take the foot back in the lunge from that high position, quite often the leg isn't far enough back, so hence we move into a star. Give ourselves a little bit of space. Now we're going to take the palm on the front hand and lift it up into reverse warrior. The rear hand is going to come round and see if we can find on that front thigh. Now it's going to lift up to 12 o'clock to start with the top hand. Now, if you can, looking towards your top fingers, you're going to straighten the front leg and take your top hand towards the back of the mat. So 2 straight legs. So it's very long down the side of the body. We'll come back into that soft knee for warrior two. Bring the hands in towards the heart. Press the hands forwards. Spin the back heel. You lean into the front leg a little bit. And then we're stepping up to the front of the mat. Just landing the feet parallel, a distance apart. Take the hands high as we breathe in. Hands into the heart. Soften the knees over the toes. Weight goes into the left foot. Right foot comes away from the floor. It's a little lean forwards and a slow press of the foot back high. Dropping the foot down. Heel comes to the ground. We open out. Feet sideways. Take our star position. Just wiggle a little bit longer. And then turn the feet towards the front mat and sink into our warrior two. Again, we'll turn the palm on the front hand. Remember, it's 12 o'clock and a wrap round arm. And slowly straighten that front leg. And as you do, let the top arm reach over towards the back of the mat. Soften the front knee into our warrior two. Hands in towards the heart. Press forwards, we spiral gently. Lean a little forwards and step it up to the front of the mat. Hands come high through the heart. Exhale slow and low. Now we're going to take the left foot back as far as we can. And I'm going to bring the blocks underneath. So I'm just going to, not on the lowest setting, they're a little bit higher than that. I'm going to check my front knee is over my ankles. I'm going to have a little look. And I'm going to take the foot a little bit further out, the right foot, a little bit further out than I would normally. Just a fraction, a couple of inches maybe. The reason for that is I want to be able to drop the body down on the inside of the thigh a little bit more, press out through the back heel. And I'm going to start to straighten the front leg and let myself lift up around the spine, sink back down, try and let the torso sink into that thigh, keeping the back leg straight. And I straighten the front leg as I exhale, draw the belly in. So it's a little bit like a lunge with a cat-cow thrown in for good measure. Lifting up. Sinking down. Lifting up. Sinking down. One last lift. And then I'm going to press off the toes on the back foot. Stepping into the forward fold. Bring the hands onto the hips. And lift up. Inhale high. Hands through the heart. Check the feet are parallel distance. About a hips distance apart. Folding down. Bring the hands onto the hips. And from the chest forwards. Inhale high. Hands through the heart. And exhale low. Then step the right foot back. Big step. Check the front knee position. Walk that left foot out a little bit to the side. And then on the exhale, straighten the front leg. Round the spine, let the head drop. Inhale, dropping down. Pressing away. Inhale. Smooth exhale out. Inhale down. Press it back out. Coming forward, sinking again. Lifting, pressing into the hands as well as the leg. We'll take one more. And then we'll take a normal lunge position, take a breath. Bring the foot through, adjust the feet a little bit to hip distance. Hands onto the hips to lift up. Inhale high. Hands through the heart. Slow and low, come into the floor. Hands onto the hips. Lengthening out. Hands through the heart. And extend down to the floor. As you arrive, we'll take the left foot to the back of the mat into a big step. Place the left hand onto the floor. I'm going to bring my right hand onto the right hip. I'm going to press the thumb into the hip joint between my thigh and my hip. So it's pressing the hand towards the back of the mat. So I'm moving the hip backwards a little bit, then rotating the chest, keeping the thumb hooked into the corner of the legs to lengthen them back. And then I'm going to release the hand up towards the sky. The strong back leg pressing out through the heel. And then bring the hand to the floor. Push off the toes into the front of the mat. Hands on the hips. Lift. Inhale high. Exhale down to the floor. Hands onto the hips. We lift. Coming back down to the floor. Right foot back. Plant over right hand. Left hand comes on the hip. We hook that thumb into the hip socket joint and push back just a little bit. And then rotate the chest in towards the thigh. And we think we've got as much length and movement in that hip. We can take the hand up towards the sky and rotate the chest around. Trying to keep the back heel pointing towards the sky, and then drawing in towards the chest a little bit. Last breath. Hand comes to the floor. Take the step forwards. Hands under the hips and lifting up. Inhale high. Exhale. Folding those ribs and thighs together. They should be warming up a little bit. So we should be getting a little deeper, hopefully. Hands to the hips to lift. Breath in. Exhale down to the floor. And then we'll take the left foot back of the mat. Bring the hands on the inside of the front leg. Take the foot out to the side. Turn the toes out 45 degrees. You're going to let the back knee down onto the floor and untuck the toes. We're going to twist gently in. So first of all, just make sure that you don't drop into this bottom elbow and hyperextend the elbow. You want to pull that back a little bit so that the muscles in the tricep and the biceps start to work evenly. And the shoulder draws back a little bit. We turn the body up towards the sky and just bring the hand on the inside of that thigh. Just letting the hip open out gently. Make sure the knuckles on the bottom hand are pressing evenly into the floor. And then we'll take a breath. Bring both hands down to the floor. Leave the knee out to the side. Take the hands forwards about a hand's distance. And then see if you can bring the elbows down onto the ground. Lengthen the crown of the head away. And lengthen the toes of the opposite leg, the left one out towards the back of the mat. Bring the hands back in. We'll walk the right foot back in. Just adjust the hand out so it comes into a normal lunge. We tuck the toes on the back foot underneath. Press off the toes into that forward fold. Bring the hands under the hips to lift up. Inhale high. Exhale low. Really draw the belly in. Fold as tight as you can. Then hands onto the hips and lift. And back down to the ground. And as we arrive, we take the right foot back and out into the lunge. Just take the left foot off to the side a little bit. Drop in the back knee. Toes out to the side a fraction. Adjusting that bottom hand, making sure the arm's in the right place, shoulder is back. And then we open the chest. And let it lift up towards the sky, and a little bit of pressure on that left hand to just help encourage the hip open out to the side. And again, we'll bring the hands back down, keep the knee out to the side, walk the fingers forwards, that hand's distance, and then see if we can bring the elbows down to the ground. Lengthen the crown of the head out. So you're trying to get the body long and the back leg, you're just inching away if there's any extra space to be found. And we'll bring the hands back in. Walk that left foot back into neutral territory. Tuck the back toe. Take a little breath. Push off the toes into that forward fold. Hands come onto the hips. Lift up. Inhale high. Hands through the heart and exhale low and long and slow. Hands come to the hips. Lift up. Inhale high. Hands through the heart. And exhale down. Now as we arrive, we'll take the left foot to the back of the mat into a big lunge. Take a breath and walk the fingers around to the long side of the mat. And turn the toes in a little bit. Take a breath. Going to come right up onto the fingertips. Take a little bit of time to roll the shoulders back away from the ears and lengthen the crown of the head away from the tailbone. Working on getting the weight even between the front, the back, and the sides of the feet, and squeezing the thighs together a little bit. On the exhale, we're going to drop the hips over the thighs and down towards the ground. Then we'll lift up on the breath in, come up onto the fingertips, and exhale back down. So just a little slow pendulum movement. Inhaling up, trying to keep the legs straight. Remember the toes are turned in, just a fraction. You might need to adjust as you get a little lower. Essentially, you're trying to keep the torso nice and long, and it's just a swing from the hips down. And then we'll come back up. Walk the fingers around to the long side of the mat, into our lunge. Take a breath, push off the toes into the forward fold, bring the hands onto the hips, and let ourselves lift. Inhale high, exhale long and slow. Hands on the hips, lengthen up, inhale. Hands come down gently. Take a little breath. Right leg comes all the way to the back of the mat into the lunge. We bring the fingers around. Let ourselves turn the toes in, come up onto the fingertips again. This time, make an effort to put a little bit more of a bend in the knees. And bring the hands one at a time behind the base of the spine. Interlace the fingers. Draw the hands towards the tailbone, shoulders squeeze back a little bit, and then we drop the thighs over and down. See if we can take the hands towards the sky. Keep shoulders away from the ears. And then we'll ease the hands back onto the hips. And then from there to the floor. We'll lift up the chest halfway. Walk the fingers around to the front of the mat. Take a little breath. Press off the toes and the back foot into the forward fold. Hands come onto the hips. We lift. Inhale high. Exhale down to the floor. Hands onto the hips. And down to the ground. As we arrive, we'll take a little breath. Left foot to the back of the mat. Big step. Walk the fingers around to the long side of the mat. Then turn the toes out. Walk the fingers into the back leg, softening the knee. And then we're going to lift the heel away from the ground, so we come onto the tippy toes on that foot. The long length, toes point up towards the sky. So you bring the fingers back in front of the body. So try and lift up as high as you can. Now, if you feel steady, you find a focus point. And see if you can bring the hands away from the floor in towards the heart. Keep the belly drawn in. Slow your breath. And then we bring the hands down to the floor. And slowly work our way around to the front of the mat. And we come into the second side. Fingers again in. Again, if it feels comfortable, feels safe to let the hands, you can always do it one hand at a time. There's no rush. It's really about discovering that balance point. Bring the hands back down to the floor. Walking the fingers around to the front end of the mat. We lift the hips a little bit so we can come into a lunge. Take a breath. Step forwards. Hands onto the hips, long spine, and let ourselves lift. Inhale high. Exhale low. Hands on the hips. All the way back up. Down to the floor. Right foot back, big step. Hands to the side, we walk the fingers around. Turn the toes out. Walk into the back heel. And bring the fingers in front of the body. And just see if we can find a balance point. And we'll bring the hands down to the floor. Let ourselves move across to the front of the mat. Just adjust the body, toes, etc. Fingers in front again. And again, your choice, whether you lift one hand, both hands, or keep the hands on the floor, your choice. As long as you fall gently. Bring the hands onto the floor. Wrap it around. Into the lunge, we step forwards, front of the mat. Bring the hands onto the hips and let ourselves lift up. Inhale high. Exhale down. We're going to step back into down dog just for a moment. And then come into a plank. And we'll let the knees come down to the ground. We'll move into a Sphinx pose, so elbows come underneath the shoulders, palms. Lengthen the legs away, draw the belly in, lift the chest. Try and press the shoulders out wide, as if you've got somebody holding their hands on your shoulders and squeezing in. So you're going to resist that, press back out. Belly's nicely drawn into the spine to help get that length and lift. Eyes are lengthening out, toes lengthening out. The heels are rolled out slightly, toes rolled in very gently to keep some space in the lower back. Body opens up, you might find some more space. And then we're going to bring the hands back down underneath the shoulders, right down to the bottom of the ribs. Press away from the floor, so we'll lift up onto all fours. Let the knees lift away into that down dog shape. Just walking the feet into the center of the mat, and then bringing the hands onto the hips to lift up. So we're going to take a balance piece now. I like to step off my mat, just moving stuff out of the way. It's a variation on tree pose called Kite. So the toes come together, a little bit of a gap for the heels. So make sure that your floor space is clear. If you need to step out, you're going to trip over something. We're going to take a little breath and allow ourselves to take the weight into our left leg. So be careful that as you do that, your hip doesn't sort of sink out to the side. You want to draw the body back into the center line and lift the right leg so the knee comes up to about the height of the hip. We'll take the hands out. Starting off with shoulder height to start with, just finding our balance. And then rather than taking the hands all the way to the sky, we'll try and find somewhere that's about 45 degrees. And rather than having soggy arms, right yourself really reach out through the fingertips, like your branches are growing out. Then you're going to take your right knee out to the side. Slowly extend the foot out to the toes, stretch. You've got a long leg. And you're going to gently bring your foot back, keeping the leg straight until you think that your foot is hovering like half an inch away from the ground. So stretching out through the fingers. Try and keep the shoulders relaxed, but the arms are active. Remember to spread the toes. So you should be able to feel the thigh muscle in the right leg contracting a little bit. Left leg's going to be doing a lot of wriggling around. And then we'll bring the foot back in. Whew. And shake out the legs a little bit. Bring the toes back together again, set on the second side. Allow yourself to draw that weight in, keep the hips strong. It's hip stability that we're looking at. So the knee comes up on the left side, hands come out shoulder distance apart. And then we lift to where we think is 45 degrees. Really stretch out actively through the fingertips. Carefully take the knee out to the side. Start to point the toes out and the leg out. Stretch the toes out as well. And then ease that foot down to where you think you're half an inch away from the floor. Now you might find that your toes bump into the ground a little bit. It's not a problem. Stretch out through the fingers. And then we'll relax and bring everything back in. Just shake out the shoulders and the legs. We're going to come down to the floor, so we're going to take our block. So just bending these gently, coming down into a squat. Taking the block behind, letting the legs out in front. Shoulders a little bit of a stretch round. Flex the toes back. Get the body nice and long, and then we're going to take the right foot and just wrap it underneath so it comes out to the left hip. Do the same with the left leg, coming across and the knees high. Right arm lifts, rotates around. I'm going to counter lever the arm and the leg to each other. Now, I like to look forwards in this pose, but you can look over the back shoulder or have the chin facing the heart. What we want to be careful of is we're not sinking into the lower back in the pelvis. You want to draw the body up a little bit, get some height, and that will help with the twist. And we'll release from here. Lengthen the body out. Cross it over. Make sure the hips are pointing in a direction front of the mat. As you bring the foot in, check both sitting bones are on the floor. Get a little bit of height again as we do. Left hand lifts and rotates around. And we'll release. So both legs out in front, sitting tall. We'll draw the left heel in So the toes of that foot still point forwards. The knee comes down to the floor. If it doesn't, you take a block underneath the back of the thigh or a cushion. Make sure the toes on the front leg are pointing up towards the ceiling. Lift up. Try and draw the body up. Fold the hips over the thighs. Take the hands onto the front foot. So we're not trying to get down super low. We just want to get the hands resting on the toes, if not onto the ankle. And then we're going to lift the body up and draw the shoulders back. So starting to ease the foot towards us and lengthen out the back of that straight leg. Belly drawn in, actually sending the tailbone towards the back of the mat a little bit. And then we'll release. And we'll take it to the second side. So both legs out in front, heel into the groin. Lift up high. Fold it over as we get that little bend in the knee. Take the hands onto the foot. And then draw the foot back. Lift the body high. Draw the belly in and sail the tailbone back. So it's the sending of the tailbone towards the back that actually straightens out that front leg completely for you. It's hard to believe with all those forward folds, we thought we would have opened out the hamstrings and the calf muscles. There's still some extra length that we weren't making use of. Just that little bit of foot flexion makes all the difference. And then we'll release. Now I'm just going to cross the heels over. So I'm going to keep the first heel in, but rather than the toe pointing forwards, they're now out to the side. Bring the opposite heel in. Let's sit up nice and tall. Bring the fingers in front for a seated forward fold. So just letting the hands walk forwards. Again, just trying to lift the hips up over the thighs. Taking the hands out towards the front of the mat and letting the head come down. Just pushing into hands a little bit, drawing the belly in. And we use the hands to walk back in and make a note of which leg is on front. Stretch them both out to the side. Bring the first foot back in again. Second foot comes back in, so we're balancing out both sides, fingertips, nice long spine. Lift up or forwards, rolling out gently. And then lifting back up, walking the fingers in, untangle the legs. We come right down onto our backs. So I'm going to move the block out, just take that towards the back of the mat for my head. Knees are high, hands behind for safety of the spine. Knees in, gently down. And then once I've arrived, I'm going to wriggle the shoulders underneath and lengthen the hips out. Bring the feet together close in towards my bottom. I'm going to draw the left knee in towards the body and then draw that towards my left armpit and slide the right leg out down the center line. Spread the toes, have the foot point up towards the sky, so there's a little bit of internal rotation taking place. Draw the belly into the spine, nice and low. And we'll cross that over to the opposite side. So bring the feet in. First, the hands come around the shin, knees in towards the chest. And then we guide it towards that armpit. And lengthen the left leg out. Spread the toes. Press the heel. Rotate the thigh in a traction. Try and broaden out the back of the shoulders. It's very easy when we're drawing the knee in to kind of hunch around a little bit. So just making an effort to keep a nice space around the back of the neck. And we'll release from there. Going to let both feet come in close to the bottom, knees together. Take the arms out wide, crucifix style. Take a little breath. I'm going to roll over towards the left, head to the right, shoulders relaxed on the ground. And we'll finish that off to the opposite side. So inhaling up, rolling over. And we'll come back to the center and move into happy baby. So knees come in and widen out. I like to draw my chin in towards my chest, draw the belly down, and I can slide my hands down the shins towards the outside of the little toe. And then watch the sole of the foot move towards the sky, a little wider than the mat distance, and then letting the head roll back down again. Now, if your happy baby tends to rock around a little bit from side to side, that's fine. Try and relax the shoulders away from the ears. See if you can encourage the tailbone to move towards the floor. Muscles in the face, going to soften off around the eyes and the jaw. And then we'll begin to release the feet gently to the ground. And moving into Shavasana. So just taking a moment to notice how the body feels, wriggling any last little wrinkles out of the body. And then when you're ready, sliding the heels down to the corner edges of the mat, letting the toes hang out. So we want to keep the heels on the ground as we slide out. If you lift the foot off the ground a little bit, you end up overworking your hip flexors. Spine is out of balance, and you can actually pull a lower back muscle just in that last couple of breaths of your physical practice. which would be unfortunate. So it's worth keeping the heels on and just sliding the feet out. Loosen the jaw and then let everything sink. We'll begin to start to move those toes, fingers, ankles and wrists. And then take a deeper breath and a big stretch. Allow the knees to gently move in towards the body. Find a little hug. And then a right exhale, rolling over to the right side, just using the hands. Lift gently away from the floor. Come back up to sitting. Let yourself to settle. Bring the hands in towards your heart. Take a little breath. And as you exhale, just gently letting the chin drop, drawing the belly in, bowing down to the floor to seal your practice. On the inhale, lifting up. Namaste. Thank you for joining me.